Hello and welcome to episode 181 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. I'm editing it, but I still don't know what to call it. So, I mean, you know by now because you saw it in your podcast player, but at this moment, I don't know. Well, that was information you didn't need. Here's some information you do need. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by Dancing for Diabetes, Omnipod, and Dexcom. I'm going to do something here I don't usually do. A couple of shout outs for social media people following the show. This one's the Carb Counting Mess on Instagram who told me that they left the endo's office with a 6.5 A1C. Congratulations. And the endo asked how they did it. She told her about the podcast. And now the podcast has been introduced by her endocrinologist to other people in the practice. And before she knew it, that person was coming back with better A1C results. So Carb Counting Mess, you're not such a carb counting mess, first of all. And secondly, thanks for sharing the show with other people, especially your endocrinologist, who seems willing to share it with other people again. That was really cool. And here, this one's from Facebook. Hey, Amanda in Massachusetts. How are you? Congratulations on your 6.1 A1C. But next time when your mom tries to take a victory lap, don't laugh at her in the endo office. Seriously, congratulations. Really well done. 6.1 is quite something. You should be really proud of yourself. And let your mom be happy for a second. Don't roll your eyes at her, okay? All right, let's get to the show, shall we? This episode is with Alicia. Alicia is Charlie's mom, and Charlie was diagnosed the day after his second birthday. I really think you're going to like this one, but please remember as you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your medical plan. And you know what else you should remember? dancingfordiabetes.com. That's diabetes.com. The people at Dancing for Diabetes aren't asking you for anything. They just want you to know more about them. Please visit dancingfordiabetes.com. There's also links in your show notes. And while you're looking in those show notes, if you're interested in getting an Omnipod or a Dexcom, there's links there too.
I am Alicia Schultz, a scientist at a university who does research for a living, and I have a husband and two sons, and one of them has type 1 diabetes.
Are you able to say what type of research, or do you do whatever lands on your desk?
I work in a biochemistry lab, and I work in a school of pharmacy.
Okay.
Our lab does drug discovery. And my project is looking for alternative therapies to hormone replacement therapy to try to alleviate the memory decline that occurs in postmenopausal women.
Now that's just what you tell people to get funding. You're really trying to fix the zombie problem. Is that correct? Is there a zombie problem? Is it going to happen? Yes or no, Alicia? I need to know right now.
I don't think it's going to happen. I hope it's not. And honestly, with my son having type 1, there's parts of my brain that are like, in the event of a zombie apocalypse, what will we do?
What do we do? Yeah, I've had that thought, actually.
So I kind of want to start a pig farm.
Oh, make your own insulin.
Make my own insulin.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Alicia's got a plan, everyone. That's what you're hearing right now, is that most people don't have a real plan. I always tell people that if it happens, you come get me because I'm making it. And so you're going to want to be with me because I'm going to make it to the end. But I don't actually believe in any of that. I just think that it's nice to get you rolling and comfortable, so we're talking. So you have a son who was diagnosed pretty early, right? How old was he? Are we going to say his name or no?
Yeah, we can say his name. His name is, his official name is Charles, but we often call him Charlie. But I have a tendency to switch between.
Does it matter is it your like how you feel, Charles or Charlie, or is it just happens randomly?
I think so.
Yeah, you think so?
I'm not sure. Yes, I think sometimes it's, I'm trying to speak more formally. I call him Charles.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, he was diagnosed the day after his.
Alicia, you cut out. I'm not sure what you said. He was diagnosed
literally the day after his second birthday.
Wow. So there was still like cake on the counter under foil and stuff like that, and stuff was all over the place, and you were coming down from
well...
Is he your oldest or your second child? I'm sorry.
He is my oldest. He actually didn't get a birthday that year, unfortunately, because the party was that weekend, the weekend after his actual birthday occurred, and we canceled that.
Yeah, you would think. Did you just do it with some Jell-O at the hospital and a candle, or did you just look at him and go, you know what, we're going to just do this next month? You're not even going to know the difference.
I think we planned on trying to have something at some point, and it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen, yeah.
Luckily, he had been at my parents' house, and they had done like a little celebration with him, which I'm sure was great for undiagnosed diabetes. You know.
Well, do you know what his blood sugar was when he was when you took him to the hospital?
You know, I don't, but we have like this portal thing, and the earliest, like one of the earliest test results in there actually wasn't even that high. I think it was only like between 350 and 400.
How did you catch it?
Well, it kind of started about, his birthday is early November. It was sometime mid-October. I went camping with just him. My husband, I don't know what he had going on. He had something else going on. It was like a last-minute trip.
Yeah, I would have said I had something going on too if you were going camping, but that's smart. Camping? Oh no, I have something.
I like camping, but camping with children is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So, but it was with another family that had kids, and literally their son is like 2 days younger.
Okay.
So, very close in age. So, he woke up in the middle of the first night there, drenched in what I thought was sweat, some urine. He had obviously leaked through his diaper, and just like screaming for water. Like, what is going on? And that whole weekend, we went through a ton of diapers, and then it kind of fluctuated for a week or two, where he would have days where he'd drink a ton of water, and other days he wouldn't drink quite as much. But he's a kind of, we were like, oh, he's always been a good drinker, so it's not that abnormal. And in hindsight, I'm like, maybe that was just type 1 developing.
Yeah.
It just kind of came and went, and I feel like something's wrong. And so I called the pediatrician and kind of wrote it off a little bit as like, oh, maybe he had a growth spurt and his bladder didn't catch up. And
that is the least technical thing anyone's ever said.
I'm like, as a scientist, my brain was like, I don't know, can that really happen? I don't know. I don't know that much about actual organ development, you know? So, but he wasn't really, he hadn't like lost, like he's also always been like a pretty good eater. And so it's not like he was, like he's had times where he would eat a lot. And so it wasn't that abnormal to have him, you know, eat. Like, so some of the signs that like are typical, like were things that we didn't see as being abnormal for our kid. And he wasn't like losing weight.
Okay.
So we were kind of like, not likely this, and we had it was literally his like 2-year pediatrician normal checkup was scheduled for the day after his birthday. And we're like, well, we've got this other one scheduled already. And, you know, it's kind of like, well, probably not this, not likely,
but you bring it up and
keep an eye on it. Yeah. And if anything else happens, definitely call us back. And then he threw up randomly. And it was like one time, and then he didn't throw up anymore. And then like a few days later, after going out for breakfast for pancakes, he threw up again. And we're like, whoa. And then we got sick. So we're like, oh.
So then you thought maybe everybody was sick. Yeah. Boy, it's so
yeah.
Circumstances
he did have a stomach bug.
Right.
Yeah.
But circumstances kept pushing you away from like the idea that he might have diabetes. It's interesting.
Exactly.
Dancing for Diabetes provides free dance class for kids and teens with type 1 diabetes. They also host several outreach events, and they have a program for kids, teens, and adults called Touched by Type 1. DancingForDiabetes.com.
That's why he was with my parents for like the day before, like on his actual birthday.
Because you guys were sick.
Because, yes, my husband and I were actually sick.
Okay.
And he came back to us, and I'm like, why are we better and he's not? And like still throwing up. So we went to our pediatrician appointment, and really fun to get a urine sample from a 2-year-old. they literally stick a bag
around this whole business.
No
kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that would be.
No, you 2-year-olds really don't urinate on command, so it took a while. And once we actually left the pediatrician, and I just went home and waited. And just like every 20 minutes checked his diaper to see if there was any urine in the bag. Mm-hmm. And the minute there was any, they'd given me like a urine sample cup. I put it in there, and my husband took it back to the pediatrician. And they were gone a while. And I was like at home being like,
yeah. She's starting to feel
not
like
good.
Yeah, right.
And my husband came home and my son was home with me, urine sample, and my son was sleeping on me, and he's like, "Honey, we need to go to the hospital right now." And I was just like, "Oh man, no,
it's not what I wanted to hear."
We went to the the emergency. They were waiting for us, and it's being in an emergency room with a toddler is pretty traumatic.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I felt so bad for him. Like, having an IV put in and lab checking in the ER is like hourly. Mm-hmm. So it was just not good.
It was interesting.
Probably spent like. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say that Arden was diagnosed a couple weeks after her second birthday. But we figured it out more in the middle of the night. So she was pretty, wiped out and asleep when we took her, and she slept through most of what happened in her, initial, being checked over. And the one thing that my wife and I look back on now, and we realize we wouldn't have done the same way, is that when it was time to take her to the NICU, they took her from us, and we didn't go with her. And they put us in a holding room and told us to get some sleep, and they'd come get us in a couple of hours. And we did that because it was by then it was 3:30 in the morning maybe. My wife has said a million times and said, "Why did we not go with her?" In hindsight, I wish we would have went with Arden. Thinking about being able to see into the past and make better decisions, or maybe even see into the future, have you considered using a Dexcom continuous glucose monitor? Because with the Dexcom CGM, you can kind of do just that. You can see what happened in the past with your blood sugar, which will help you make decisions in the future. And you can also, if I may, change the future by making better decisions in the present. Those better decisions might be basal rates, boluses, they might be pre-bolusing, they might be, 20 minutes after you eat going, "Oh wow, I don't think I counted those carbs right, I can use a little more." And where will you get that information from? Well, you'll get it from the data that's coming back from your Dexcom continuous glucose monitor. The G6 sensor is amazing. Arden says it goes on completely pain-free, and it doesn't require any finger stick calibration. Not only that, but there's a share feature. And let me just tell you a little bit about that. When the person wearing the CGM, whether it's your child or your spouse or yourself, you can allow followers to see your blood sugar in real time. So maybe you're going to be watching your kid's blood sugar while they're at school, or maybe, like some people who listen to this show, maybe their wives are nurses overnight and they keep an eye on it for them when they're busy at work. There's a million different ways to use the share feature. You'll decide which way is best for you. But no matter what you do with it, I believe that you're going to find that your decisions and your outcomes are better. Please go to dexcom.com/juicebox or use the links in your show notes to find out more. You'll also be able to find links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Get started today. Why did we not go with her? I don't know. They told us not to, and we just did what they said. But you're so crying and knocked over and everything. You're not really thinking straight. And maybe that's why. Maybe they're let's keep the crying people away from the baby. But it was just it was really. It was just an overwhelming experience. It really was. So I don't know what happened to Arden in those first couple of hours like you do. I I don't want to get too far off track, but I have to ask, you have sort of a northern accent, but you went camping in mid-October. So
yeah.
Are you crazy?
That's because I'm from Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, I'm from Wisconsin, and we love our seasons, including fall. And it was going to be a pretty nice weekend. And
you were on your way. See, October in Wisconsin is like summer still to you. So, you know.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, right. Because, I mean, it's
usually transitional. Like, it can be good or it can be bad. And if the weather's nice, it's awesome. Because leaves are beautiful, and
my brother moved to Wisconsin so long ago. I've never visited him, and he's always like, "Why don't you come?" And he's like, "What about the lakes?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "I have no free time."
You need to come in summer because we're all like, nice out.
Yeah.
Like, we need to go do something right now, all the time. We have so many festivals; it's ridiculous. Like
airplanes and beer and like all that stuff. I know, he tells me, but I keep telling him, like, I have no time to travel. And the one time you want me to travel, you want me to go to Wisconsin, and then your selling point is a lake. I'm like, I don't know. And so, okay,
I live outside of Milwaukee. Milwaukee is one of the West best kept secrets. Okay. Don't tell anyone.
Oh well, yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing in Milwaukee. That's it. My brother is nearby. Yeah. I think he moved out to Oshkosh originally, and that's where I grew up.
Oh,
okay. And he's somewhere.
That's my hometown.
He's somewhere still near there. So.
Okay.
I don't exactly know.
When you said airplanes, like, he's got to be around Oshkosh.
Because they do that big festival where everyone comes in and like flies like little airplanes and like this whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. We get people from all over the world.
Well, we've dug into the extent of my Wisconsin knowledge right there. So other than once told me, I should have my brother on this podcast to just tell this story sometime of a guy he worked with who went on a drunken ride in a Winnebago with a friend and beer, and it ended up with them getting shot by a cop. It's maybe the best story I've ever heard in my entire life. and
Wisconsin.
That's exactly what he said when it was over. He was like, and then he finished. He's like, these people have stories like this constantly. It was when he was first there. He's like, he called me. He was like, you have to hear what I'm about to tell you. He's like, listen very closely. And I was like, okay. And then he spun a tale. It was fascinating. I literally might get him on just to tell that story. I wonder if he could still tell it that well. But anyway, so Charlie's diagnosed. How long did you spend in the hospital afterwards?
Well, we went to the ER on Thursday, and then they eventually checked us into the actual hospital. And we went home on Saturday, midday.
Okay. Well, that's not bad.
A couple days, yeah.
And then
we didn't want to be anymore.
No, of course not.
We were like, what do we need to do to get out of here?
Yeah, there's beer to drink. And so, but so, okay, so you come out, so this is only about a year ago, right? He's only about 3 now?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Okay. And
so his birthday is November.
November. So you're diagnosed in, end of 2016, beginning of 2017-ish?
Yes, end of 2016.
Right.
Yep.
What was what was it like leaving the hospital? Like, what did they give you? What were they telling you how you were going to manage this? Like, what tools did you have?
We had learned how to poke his finger, do a blood sugar check.
Mm-hmm.
We had a one-touch Vireo, and insulin pens.
Okay.
All the things that go along with an insulin pen.
Yeah.
And if his blood sugar is this, give him this. In these ranges, give him this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of all they said at the time. They also gave us syringes, which was really weird because I'm like, we're leaving the pharmacy, and we're like, why are we taking these boxes of
yeah.
I don't even know what to do with this. But little did we know, it was because on Monday, our children's hospital is a really, really great diabetes clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And what we didn't know is that they have all this education and that we were in the hospital getting survival day 1. We didn't realize that. And we had this appointment scheduled for Monday morning at the clinic, and we didn't know, but that was survival day 2 education.
Yeah, that's when they were going to start really dumping.
How to use syringes. Yeah.
It's funny, they give you all that stuff and you're staring at it for a couple of days going like, what is this for? And it's so very, like they had a plan, but they didn't really let you in on it very much. They sent you home with, if this happens to this.
They might have.
It's possible you just didn't hear.
Yeah, well, or didn't like process it all. You know,
for sure.
Like you can, I personally emotionally a wreck. Like I equate it now to like postpartum emotions, almost like just wild, crazy emotions with random crying. I was like, this is like having a newborn all over again.
Right.
Like I feel out of control and I don't know what's going on. And it was not good.
But you feel like they're not going to grow up. Like you feel like it's a newborn. You don't understand how to take care of it, and it's not going to get any older, and you're never going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to be caught in that moment, like that whole time of that the unsure, I'm about to kill this kid feeling. That spot.
Yes.
It's a great place.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's wonderful.
How good was the instruction when you went back for the bigger boot camp on diabetes? Did you leave that feeling better or not particularly?
Yeah. Oh, we left feeling better. That they taught us how to pull up from the pen cartridges with syringes, and we actually started doing, because the pens can only do half a unit, and we actually started doing estimating quarter units.
Right.
And so we had a new scale, and then they also gave us a fixed carbohydrate diet to help basically figure out his numbers and ratios and stuff for a little bit before they could release us, I guess, into the world of carb counting. The hard part for that part, fixed carb amount per meal was like 30 grams of carbs. And I think for some people that might be easy, but my kid eats like, now it's like 70 grams on average a day. So to get him 30 in one meal, and this was like, a year ago, he was probably averaging like 60 a day at that point.
So this was too much food for you in a sitting at that point.
Yeah. It was just like forcing carbs into him just to give him insulin. Like, it was dumb. I was just like, this is stupid. Like,
when you say
I have to give more carbs. So
keep eating. Well, Alicia, I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit, so I got confused. But what it made me think of is that's just the math that the doctor knew. Like, it's this much insulin for this many carbs. Like, could they not have like divided that in half?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, but luckily by Thanksgiving, because his birthday's early November, luckily by Thanksgiving, like literally the day before Thanksgiving, we had then a couple different educations because they realized that we were on top of things and willing to very quickly learn stuff. And so they gave us 2 education days at once.
Okay.
For Thanksgiving, which allowed us to start carb counting. Okay.
Well, so how did it? So right now, are you still using pens?
No. We basically we only used the pens for that one weekend.
Oh, no kidding.
We very quickly switched to like straight up syringes.
Right.
Pulling our own insulin rather than having the pen measure it. And we did that until we got a pump.
How long have you had a pump?
11 months.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Oh, so you did it pretty
March.
quick. Yeah,
we're already on our second pump.
Is it because you didn't like the first one, or because what? How did you?
Because the first one was animus.
Oh, they stopped making it. They were like, "Hey, here's this."
I mean, all the deals. for switching to something else.
Right. And you knew you had to, so you took advantage of one of them.
Yeah.
Which one did you go to?
I went with Omnipod. Because we really, with him being little, we needed something that had like a remote.
Mm-hmm.
Like having to fiddle with it was, no. He's an active kid and no.
You almost had to knock him over and hold him down to give him insulin so he wouldn't move around while you were trying to use the controller that was attached to him by the tube.
Yeah, or running after hey, you have a tube, you can't run away from me. And you're like running after him, holding and hoping that you don't drop the expensive pump and break it, or B, that you just pull the infusion side out, and then you have to do that whole rigmarole again.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a pretty fun thing. So having a remote kind of a deal breaker. And we got a Dexcom before Christmas that year. So with him being in the hospital and everything, we hit medical max, and I'm like, the children's people is like, is there anything else we can do for you? And I'm like, what do we need to do to get a Dexcom CGM?
And how did you find out about that so quickly? How did you find out about that so quickly?
My husband, Josh, is in the tech world. He's a software developer. So writes code all day. And there's a pretty prominent guy in the tech community that my husband follows for his like tech side of his life. Right. He happens to also be a type 1 diabetic.
Oh, no kidding.
And so my husband was kind of aware of his stuff that he had put out about, and immediately, like, we're in the hospital and I'm emotional wreck, and he's like problem solving by reading up all about stuff. And so when we left the hospital, we wanted a pump and a CGM.
No kidding. That's
like, I kind of feel like we said to our to get a pump and a CGM, and they were like, whoa, you need to slow down.
Like, no, my husband follows a guy for his coding, and he has diabetes, and he has this stuff, and let's get going. That's such a strange route to understanding that stuff. That's very random, actually.
Yeah.
But cool. Yeah. I mean, very cool, because it fast-forwarded you, right? It took you right to...
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And it sounds like they didn't fight you that much.
No, they didn't. And even with the pump stuff, they didn't fight us with it. They were just like, okay, we have all this education that you need to get through, and they tried to get us that as fast as
I see.
Like last January, a year ago, I think we were at the clinic 4 different times just for education.
Oh, wow.
Just to like get all the classes in. I mean, some of them were the pump classes.
Did you have to do like a nutrition class, pump?
Yeah,
all that
it's stuff. Like a pump try-on. Then they have all the pump reps there. Yeah. And so you can like look at the pump parts, and you can like trial putting on an set. We
did one of those, like a little fashion show for them. It's like a miniature sales situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got a decision to make. And might as well talk to somebody who knows the product.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When you contacted me about being on the podcast, you said that I needed to have, you were very direct, by the way. You said it was polite, don't get me wrong, but you were like, you need to have more people on who have young kids in the podcast. And I was like, okay. I don't want to argue.
Yeah.
So what I say here all the time, like, it's very easy to be on the podcast. You just have to tell me you want to be on, or there's somebody you want to hear. And it pretty much happens like that. But can you tell me why you felt that way? Because you're listening to the podcast. What was it not filling in for? Had to have been something that you weren't feeling served on, I guess. So this morning, I hope they don't mind me saying this. This morning, I was talking to the mother of a little girl who lives around Atlanta. And we were talking about how we manage type 1 diabetes. And she said, no one's ever said this to me before. And I thought, it's just so disappointing. Like, new people come into the community constantly, and they hear the same things over and over again, the kind of, same kind of BS. And then it's up to them to figure the way through everything to come up with this idea of their own. But where do you get that information from if people aren't constantly telling you, hey, there's a better way? And if you're considering insulin pumping, in my opinion, and based on a decade of use, The better way is the Omnipod. It is tubeless. It is carefree. You can swim with it and shower with it without disconnecting. The process of putting on an Omnipod is like 3 steps and takes I can do it in like a minute at this point. So your pod changes are almost effortless, and it's tubeless. So you're not carrying any large controller device on your body. You know, and if you're an adult, that's hard enough. You're sticking it in your bra or jamming it in your pants. But imagine if you're a kid and you're carrying this thing around that's heavy and large. On the other hand, the Omnipod is tiny, and it's controlled wirelessly by this little device. All you have to do is pick it up and say, hey, give me a little more basil, a little more insulin. You know, how many carbs am I eating? This many. Push a button. It's that easy. myomnipod.com/juicebox. The links in your show notes are at juiceboxpodcast.com. At that link, you'll find out how simple it is to get a free, no obligation demo pod sent right to your house. So you can check it out and see if what I said is true. myomnipod.com/juicebox. It had to have been something that you weren't feeling served on.
Yeah. I felt like dealing with type 1 is a thing that is the way you deal with it to some degree has to do with your years of experience with it, but there's also an element of understanding where you are life and developmentally, and some of the things that you can do with the way that you deal with Arden diabetes, I feel is not that you can't do it, but that it needs to be a little bit more reserved, maybe with a little kid that's so little. And there's an element of some of the stuff that he doesn't understand. He didn't understand what was going on or what was happening to him. And so you can't really get that buy-in, waiting or something like that.
Okay.
And so I feel like kind of reflecting on that this morning, because I sent that message at one point in time, and we've grown and diabetes has changed, and my kid has grown a little bit since then, because when they're little, they grow so fast.
So if you would have thought to reach out to me today for the first time, would you have had the same feeling?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe I wouldn't have felt quite as strongly about it, but
Alicia,
maybe it's
what I'm hearing
good that I reached out at that time, just because, and you have had some people.
Right.
So.
Well, here's what I'm hearing. It's you. It's not me. No, I'm just kidding. So no.
Totally. Everybody's got to take their. You put it out there, but people can take from it what they need.
So I think there's
thing.
Yeah, I think there's 2 different thoughts here. In my mind when I'm listening to you, the first one is that everything's more difficult with a younger person for a couple of obvious reasons, right? You can't always count on them to eat what you expect them to eat. It's difficult to reason with them. You know, putting a bunch of insulin in somebody, putting 2 waffles in front of them, pre-bolusing for it, and 10 minutes later having a 2-year-old look at you and go, I'm not eating these waffles, would make you feel like jumping out a window. And so I get that. That's definitely one aspect of it. And the other aspect, I think, is, but I think the rest of it is this. Is that, so from my perspective, I know your life with a 2-year-old with, or somebody's life with a 2-year-old with diabetes, because I've had it before. And my thought is, my contention is that if you're not careful, you could get stuck in that fear and anxiety. And so I see myself as someone who's 50, 100 yards ahead of you on a long, dark path. And even though I'm pretty far ahead of you, and you don't have a flashlight, I keep waving my flashlight at you, yelling, hurry up, catch up, let's go, get up here. And trying to drag you from where you are to where I am. Because if I don't, I feel like you're going to get stuck back there, because that's what happened to me. And so while there's probably not an apples to apples way for me to say, this is how we deal with Arden, and I could apply it to you as a 2-year-old, although I think a lot of it applies. I think that my bigger goal is to just sort of be the person up ahead that you go, I wish I was doing it like that. How do I get to that? That looks possible. That guy, I've listened to his podcast. He seems like an idiot. So if he can do it, I probably could do it too. And to give you that feeling that it's possible, there is a place you can go, you can get to it. And and I'm here, like, come meet me at it. It's not just some random place in the up ahead that you can't imagine. So I don't know if that makes sense. It does sound like it does. Yeah.
And
okay.
I think that's why I've been reflecting on sending you that message and to now. And I wonder if some of it isn't, like, I've contemplated whether some of it is like the fear that you talk about, of the fear of doing it. But and so that's why I was like, I don't know that I would put it strongly as I had in that
clear.
initial message. So I am a very direct.
Use the word need. I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll do it. But you're also delightful, so it's not like you were like, I want to be clear, I didn't feel like you were attacking me, but you were very much, I could feel in you where you were with your diabetes by the tone of your note.
Yeah.
Like, basically what you said to me was, you have to let me come on the podcast and explain to me the stuff I don't understand between what I know and what I want to know. And if I told you in that email that the rest of it's just time and experience, that's not a very satisfying answer at that time. But it's true, right? You're starting to feel that.
There's an element too of, like, I process things verbally a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes just having somebody else to literally talk to can be helpful for myself.
Okay.
And so there's a selfish reason of, like, okay, maybe if I have this conversation that it will benefit me in some way.
Well, we have 25 minutes, Alicia. Let's have the conversation. Let's do it.
I feel too like a lot of people find the podcast and find the Facebook groups and stuff pretty early on, and they're in a time that I still pretty freshly remember, and I think it is also useful for people to hear the stories of other people going through that, like, and not having it be so far behind them.
Right.
But to, there's the emotional aspect of diabetes, and I know with a lot of tell you, like, you can't be emotionally tied to it, but it is definitely early on. It's very hard to remove yourself from it.
Absolutely. So, no, you're 100% right.
Also, I think part of my motivation.
No, I think so. I think what you're bumping up against, and what I is this thing that strikes me all the time. So this podcast is now, I just got like a Facebook message the other day. It's like, this is the anniversary. So it's like 3 years old. Where, you and I are recording what'll one day end up being like the 180th episode of it. And it's already got like 150 out. And so my one, like, issue is this. Like, I think that what I do pretty good. But my brain doesn't work in a real, like a clean order. If it did, I probably would have done the first episode about, this is what happens when you get diagnosed. And then this is this. I would have done something in some sort of like reasonable order, which as a researcher probably makes a lot of sense to you. But the funny thing,
totally.
But the funny thing is the stuff I figured out about diabetes is because my brain doesn't work like that at all. And so, right. And so what I think I've come down to is, if you really want to get something out of this podcast, you just have to listen to the episodes. And very slowly, pieces will come together and stuff will start to make sense. If you're looking for someone to put it in order for you, I'm not the guy. I can't do that. But the problem is, your hospital tried to do that. Didn't really help you.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's my expectation that these conversations are the path to it. Now, I will say this. I do have a plan to sit down with Jenny Smith again, the CDE who comes on once in a while. And I want to do like a basically, so you were just diagnosed with diabetes episode, something like a primer to get you going. I do think the podcast needs that. Yeah,
that would probably be super helpful, because the other thing that was very kind of difficult in the beginning is I did start, because I'm a podcaster, and like, I don't listen to music. I only listen to podcasts now. And I found your podcast very early on, and I was hearing all this stuff, and I'm like, this is possible. We need to just do it. And, and my husband's like, hold on. Like, let's
slow down there.
One step at a time.
But see, I'll tell you how great that makes me
having
feel.
Having a primer episode
would help.
What?
So having a primer would help, you think?
Yes, I think it would.
Okay, I actually do too. I'm trying to imagine me for an hour staying focused on one idea. But that's but see, the funny thing is though, is the way you felt after you listened to it, that was my goal. Like, I want you to feel like I can do this. This is possible. There's a thing out here that happens. Just because I don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Because I think that is, if I can be critical for a second of people who share online together, when something doesn't work for them, and this isn't even, I should make it a bigger thing. Our minds tell us, I figured this out, it doesn't work. And so when your brain can't figure something out, your expectation is it's because it doesn't exist, right? Like, very few of us.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's one thing I realized about myself. I wrote a parenting book a few years ago, and while I was writing it, I recognized about myself that one of my favorite things to do is to get to the very edge of what I understand and just sit there in that horrible feeling like there's more and I don't know what it is, and try to imagine what it is. That's weird, and I don't think a ton of people do that. I think a lot of people get to the edge of what they can understand, and they imagine that this is the edge, this is the end of what there is to understand. And so I don't know, it's a very strange way of saying that I think that that's what happens to people. I think that they have an experience with diabetes, it goes a certain way, it happens again, and they think, and then they say those words that make me mental. Oh, that's just diabetes. And that's not just diabetes. You can eat pancakes without your blood sugar going to 350. If it's going to 350, you just don't know how to do it yet. But if you get stuck thinking that it's not possible, then I feel like I lost you. And so while you're busy messing around and it's not going well, what I want to do is give you the feeling that, no, there's an answer here. I just don't know what it is yet. And maybe this person can tell it to me, which makes it feel more hopeful and less impossible, I guess. That's my goal. Yeah.
And pancakes is a great example because we have a tendency to like going out for brunch. Mm-hmm. Pancakes are often part of that. And probably tried to figure out, like, we go to the same place, we've probably tried to figure it out like 20 times at least. And we still don't have it right.
Okay.
But we didn't get it right for a long time, I think because it was like, we know roughly it's probably this many carbs, but we still weren't bolusing for it. Like, we would still only pre-bolus for like 20 of the 50 carbs or something. And it's like, you're setting yourself for failure in hindsight.
Right.
But at the time, it was like, giving him this much insulin up front, this is scary. What's going to happen? I don't know. And we're out in public and like, what? It's just that fear. And until we started just being like, let's try it. Who cares?
Right.
Let's try. Let's, what are we comfortable with trying?
Mm-hmm.
And let's try that. And
well, Alicia, I end up telling people all the time that, so there's let me go back first. You said something really interesting. You said, so it's probably X amount of insulin, but you use less. The funny thing is that after you consciously use less insulin, when the blood sugar goes up, you never go back to, I didn't use enough insulin. It's always something else. It must have been diabetes. Yeah. Pancakes are hard to do. People do that stuff all the time. You actually, take, you know what I mean? They take away the reason and then don't go back to saying, well, that was the reason. That's fascinating to me. The second part is, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's just that fear, like that I'm going to do the wrong thing and it's going to go horribly wrong. But the truth of the matter is that in almost every situation when your blood sugar is high, if you stop and think about it, you later give more insulin. It just belonged up front. That's all. Like, it just, you know what I mean? And after you see that a couple of times, it's how you get to this very convoluted sentence that I speak a lot on the podcast, which is, you have to believe that what you know is going to happen is going to happen. You just have to. If you don't believe that, you're screwed. you have to believe it. You have to go, I know that if I don't put this insulin in right now, he's going to get high. And later I'm going to need 2 more units to bring it back down. So damn it, let's just do the 2 units right now. If you can't do that, you'll be lost forever with it.
I think the thing that makes it harder for like parents of little kids to do that is that with little kids, especially honeymooning kids, like you could do the same thing and it can go haywire.
Oh, sure.
For whatever reason.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there's an element of like that reinforcing your learning. Like you don't have that reinforcing because it can go totally opposite the next time. And this is one thing we've kind of seen recently with Charlie. I almost feel, I don't know if I think he's still honeymooning because he still, I think, has just comparative his numbers to some other people. Maybe, I don't know. But we have times where all of a sudden, out of like everything will just not work, or everything will just suddenly way overwork. Yeah. And you're just like, why is that?
So so I hate to say that happens, but that happens. And so then that's how you have to be fluid and know how to address it afterwards. When I was 10 years old, I was playing Atari. When Elizabeth Forrest was 10 years old, she was being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and beginning to hatch a plan to create an organization called Dancing for Diabetes. And today, that exists. So while I could never figure out how to get through the opening gate in Zaxxon, Elizabeth figured out how to help children with type 1 diabetes through dance. Find out more about it. Scroll down, see some of the pictures at dancingfordiabetes.com. Dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com. You have to be fluid and know how to address it afterwards. Arden had a stretch just yesterday where she was just on the low side the whole time. And so she had to go work out last night. She does like it's exercise. I don't know what you call it because I don't do it. But it's where people move their bodies really quickly for not a sporting reason, to be in better shape. Let's call it that. and so she I don't know. I don't like to think about it. It makes me upset to think about sweating. And so she does this thing. And so I'm like, okay, she's been on the low side all day, which means that everything I've bolused, I've had to give her less insulin for, and she's still hanging at like 85. So I'm like, there's a meal she ate that in any other regular situation would take 8 units. I only gave her 4.5, and she was still like 75 for a while after it was over. And I'm like, I wasn't home, and I said to my wife, I'm like, look, this training's coming up. Let's do a temp basal decrease of this much, blah, 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 right? And it's going to work. And it was working great, except that it was also the end of her pump, and none of us were paying attention to that. So last night at like, I don't know if it was like 10 o'clock, my wife goes, oh, God, we have to change our pump. And I was like, oh, all right. And then that's when we started paying attention to the fact that this beautiful like 75 blood sugar that had been existing for the past 7 hours all of a sudden was turning up, because all of a sudden her pump was kind of done. It was cooked and it wasn't delivering as well. Plus I scaled back the basal rate. So I did everything right, and then I got this spike. And I was like, oh. So I put the new pump on, and I bolused for the spike considering the new pump. And I did exactly what I knew what in the most times was going to take insulin-wise, except I forgot to take into account that she had been so like low for the last 8 hours.
Been super sensitive.
Right. And so I forgot about that because I got aggressive with the spike the way I should have been, except I should have been less aggressive with the spike. And that's a lot to think about. And I had a long day. I was out for like 5 hours doing a ton of driving. I came home tired. It just didn't occur to me right away. I did the bolus, and it came back to get me because at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, she was like 55, and she was in that 55 that it didn't matter what you did, wasn't going to stop being 55. And so got her juice, shut off her basal, did all that stuff. And I was up until, I know exactly what time I closed my eyes, 4:17 in the morning. And that's when I got her to 75 diagonal up. And I was like, oh, I know this is okay now. And so I didn't overtreat it. And I was comfortable leaving her at like 64 for like an hour while it was working itself out. But I did stay awake and pay attention to it. But it all goes back to I did the right thing. I didn't consider all of the variables, but I'm still not upset with that, because I would have rather her been 64 for an hour, 55 than to 64, then taken a while to go back up, than for me to undertreat that spike and for her blood sugar to have been 250 all night. I steadfastly I stick behind my words that I would rather stop a low or falling blood sugar than fight with a high one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
my husband and I early on have fights about that. Because he wasn't listening to podcasts like I was.
Well, it's not his fault, Josh. He's slow.
It's interesting too. So, I've a couple things I have in my brain. First, you talk about the pump being like on its last leg, and I think it doesn't deliver as accurately, or something.
It's the infusion set, so it could happen with any pump. Like sometimes the spot gets oversaturated, right? It's the site, yeah.
And then, what do you find? Do you feel like there's like almost in insulin absorption over time? Sorry, this is a very scientific way of explaining it, because this is the way I think. Like the first day of the site, you find like it overworks, and then like the second day, you kind of have like a midpoint, and then the third day, usually it's starting to decrease in like its absorption.
I don't think the first day is an overworking. I think of it as, in a perfect world, this is how it would work all the time. Okay, so right, yeah. And then it devolves as it goes along, because the site gets saturated with insulin, or maybe you're using the same sites too frequently, or whatever it ends up being. And it doesn't always happen, by the way. Some pump sites like cruise the whole time, but when, like, why do I need to change this? Right, yeah, like, oh, there's times you're like, I'm leaving this one on forever, and but there's also spots where, as you're getting to the end of that third day and you're starting to get diminishing returns in the insulin, you have to assume. I always think, well, of course that's happening, because trust me, as low as Arden was last night, she continues that trend today. She's 83 right now, and so it wasn't my like slight temp basal decrease that caused the spike. It was that combined with the life of the pump ending, basically. Yeah. And because it just is. But there are times when, she's not on the low side. And this is actually Arden I know this is as good a place as any to say, Arden just started getting her period. And this is her first time with it. And to be honest, so far, what I'm noticing is that her blood sugar is super simple to take care of. It's very stable and low, with less insulin so far during this cycle. So far.
Give it a couple of weeks. I'm sure it'll be horrible in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll find out. But I still think the goal is to just.
You might want to get some charts of like hormones over a cycle.
I'm just gonna.
Sorry, that's very science. No, you're not gonna do that. You're not.
Is what I'm gonna do. Yeah. So, well, I mean, you're in a lab somewhere making better hormones or something like that. So just send them over. But my goal is I'll just stay fluid and I'll figure it out. And I think that the expectation that your diabetes is always going to be perfect is ridiculous. Like, I saw somebody the other day talking about they're trying to get their basal rates just right. I'm like, that's a fool's errand. Like, it just really is. And I know a woman I spoke to recently who bought into the idea of like, look, just set a basic basal rate and then use temp basals, because your body changes all the time. Why would your basal rates not change pretty frequently? She got yelled at by her endo, and then she pushed back and she continued to do it, and the endo gave up, and she's having good success with it. You can't, but I see other people who are like, as soon as all I have to do is get these basals right, and then everything's going to be okay. You're fooling yourself if you think that's going to happen. You're going to get those basals right, and then something else is going to change, and they're going to be wrong again. You're going to spend your whole life trying to do this because why? Because someone told you there's basal rates in the pump, and you have to get them right. Just get them about right. It's, I don't know. Sometimes I think people focus on the wrong stuff. Yeah.
We just simplified Charlie's basal programs. I think it's maybe because my husband is reading Sugar Surfing right now.
Okay. And do they tell you to do that in Sugar? I've never read Sugar Surfing. Do they tell you to do that in Sugar Surfing?
I think husband just said to set like one basal rate and just leave it. Like,
it totally makes sense to me, and then just adjust the temps.
So now we have like two different rates, and it seems to have helped a lot of, not all of, but the things that we were noticing were being a current chronic problem.
Yeah, I do have an overnight rate that's lower than the day rate, but not by a lot. It's just what I figured out works.
Yeah.
But, you know, for the most part, we'll just adjust if we have to adjust.
I think it was in that book. My husband just told me he read something that, like, the pancreas, I don't know, research accuracy of this, but the pancreas on average puts out, for like a normal person, puts out bolus type insulin like 11 times a day.
Oh, no kidding.
Like, it just will dump insulin, you know, like we bolus for meals like 11 times a day for an average person.
Like, take care of like body functions maybe with extra insulin.
Yeah.
Well, that's
just like, what?
Well, that's why I'll tell you that what I'll do is, if it's a carb heavy meal, I'll just randomly double her basal at the near the beginning of a carb heavy meal, because it just makes sense. I think I called it carpet bombing with insulin one time, and a lot of people really like that. I've seen it online now talked about that way. Just the idea of like there's this area of time with these heavier carbs, and it just makes sense to up the basal rate over that space.
Yeah, we see that a lot too, because with protein and fat as well. And it's kind of impressive. I forget who the guy was. One that just got released with the 4-year-old. He talked about how he thought he saw it like hours later or something. And we see that too. Like, there's something with kids in the way that, especially if it's like a big meal and he's eating protein and fat, like we can see, we sometimes just, especially if it's dinner, we just all night long, he just gets an increased basal just because
the fat.
It's just, and it lasts longer than I would expect.
So there's just something about the digestion that the fat keeps the carbs sort of in your stomach, in your system longer, I guess. And
yeah, I wonder if it has to do with like digestion and sleeping, that digestion is like slowing down because other stuff is happening, or if it's a combination of little kids are also doing so much growing when they sleep, even, you know, like even outside of a growth spurt, like the things that are happening when you sleep, they sleep for so long that maybe that biochemically whatever's happening requires more basal insulin.
It's interesting. The minute Arden goes to sleep, her blood sugar starts to go down because she relaxes, and then she doesn't need, like, you know, if she's doing her homework and she's kind of amped up for her homework or something like that, the minute that I don't want to call it anxiety, but the minute that extra stuff you're thinking about goes away, her blood sugar tends to go down. Just like it goes down at the end of a school day.
Yeah. Like his mealtime insulin will wear off, and then he'll slowly tick up. And then, like, even now, we just changed his basal so that now an alarm isn't going off, not going as high. He's not going out of range. I wake up in the morning and I look, and he's had, you know, a very nice drift up and then a drift back down. And
how far up does it get before it comes back, and where does it go back to?
Well, we target 140. Mm-hmm. We don't want it to go. Our range is like 100 to 180, although we don't like treat a low unless he's like below 80.
Oh, good.
But we might give him like a little, like, and it's bedtime kind of thing. It kind of depends on time of day.
Yeah.
What's been going on and what we think is going to happen, of course. Sleeping is one thing versus he's napping and I'm awake. Mm-hmm. And he's expected to be woken up, because we also very much value sleep in our house. Like, it's very important for health, and so that's part of it.
You're trying to accomplish that. No, I know. I got so tired. I got so tired the other day. I was just like, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. And I said, I'm gonna go lay down so I don't die. And
totally.
Because I got cloudy and I was like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. And I just got done being sick, so I'm still kind of like battling back from that. And I was just like, I can't. Just laid down. So we're kind of at the end. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up or talk about?
One of the other things is that my husband and I have, very, very cutely, toddlers are awesome. I mean, he's not a toddler now, but when he was 2, and trying to get him to understand Charlie to understand diabetes, we you give stuff kind of kids terms.
Yeah.
One time he referred to getting his insulin shot as insulining. And so we've started a website called insulating.com.
Nice.
So it's insulin and then an extra N.
What do you do there? Are you blogging there? What are you doing with the space?
Yeah, we're blogging there. Right now, basically the main thing that's on there is Charlie's diagnosis story. Mm-hmm. But we're hoping to. We have a lot of other content ideas, but we'll probably do some blogging. And part of the reason the microphone that I'm speaking on was a gift. Was that start doing our own podcasting in the future as well.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, so that's kind of our
goal. Because
we do feel that there's a lot of room within the type 1 space to have more voices and more just more ideas out there of how to tackle a lot of this stuff.
Of course.
So
no, absolutely.
I guess the only other thing I want to say is that I do have another child, and that I was pregnant with him when Charlie was diagnosed, like very early.
Oh, no kidding.
So I essentially have 3 children. Diabetes, Charlie. So it's just kind of that's the whole other. We could probably talk.
And that other kid
about having a second child and worrying and about are they going to get it, but you've had a lot of people talking about that in TrialNet and stuff. So
yeah, it is. It's definitely something that gets. My son is going to be 18 in a couple weeks. He's done TrialNet. He does not have any markers for type 1 diabetes, and still, if he gets sick, I stare at him like, "Oh my God, is he going to get diabetes?" So,
have you pricked his finger? Have you done a check?
When he was younger in his sleep once, yeah, because he was coming home from school and using the bathroom a lot. And so, yeah, when he was asleep, we did it. He doesn't know we did it, I don't think. So, and that was it was a long time ago, actually. But I have. Other than that, I mean, I don't think about it often, but when he gets sick, sometimes it creeps into my head. That's for certain.
Yeah, there was so much with Charlie that I see as hindsight that now if anything remotely similar to that happens with Sam, I'm like, type 1 developing. Well, but I haven't checked.
You haven't done that yet?
So, no, he's not even 7 months old.
Right. Well, let's hope it never happens. Yeah. But I really appreciate you coming on and telling me you were coming on. And so, but it was really great of you to take the time and do it. And I know I had to push you off because I was sick. We were supposed to do this like a week or so ago, but I got so sick the night before we were supposed to do this that the day that we were supposed to do this, I did not get out of bed. That is not me. And I was in bed all day, and the next day I was a wreck. And so I appreciate you being flexible. And thank you. No, I get
it. We had it around.
Did you guys get sick there?
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy too. Like Charlie got his second stomach bug ever in his life.
Right.
And how fast ketones developed was crazy.
Oh, no kidding.
Even without blood sugar being crazy. But then afterwards, the recovery, he was so insulin sensitive. We had meals we didn't even...
You didn't need insulin for.
Yeah, plus he also didn't have a lot of appetite, so he wasn't eating a lot. So there wasn't enough to even, we would just not dose. And if he happened to go up later, we would dose. But because we actually started using because of that happening.
Okay.
Needed something work faster.
Yeah. Okay. Well, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Hey guys, if you want to check out Alicia's blog, it's at insulining.com. INSULINNING. I think that's how I learned how to spell Mississippi. MISSISSIPPI. INSULINNING. Okay, it's not quite the same. Thank you to Omnipod and Dexcom and Dancing for Diabetes. Without them, the podcast doesn't exist, so please hit the links. If you end up getting a demo pod from Omnipod or checking out the amazing G6 CGM, or if you get involved with Dancing for Diabetes, let them know you came from the podcast, please. Also, I just saw all the great new reviews and ratings of the podcast on iTunes, and I really appreciate it. Lastly, before I go, and Basil's snoring in the background, so please put up with me if you hear that. Since we did some shout-outs at the beginning of the show, I want to do a couple more because there are people listening all over the world. I didn't know if you knew that. So a bulk of the downloads, of course, do come from the United States. I think followed up by Canada is pretty much the second largest group of downloads. But then would you imagine where is next? Australia. There are also listeners in Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, South Africa, Algeria, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Turkey, Romania, Ukraine, the UK, Poland, Germany, France. Actually, the UK's got more than Australia. Come on, Australia. Catch up. You know, there are people listening in China and Japan and Russia and South Korea. So if you're one of those people in the Philippines downloading the podcast, you are totally not alone. You are so not alone because there's even someone listening in Iceland. I can't thank you guys enough for finding the show and for sharing it. I am fairly certain it would not exist in Iceland if it wasn't for you guys. So please, if you find the show rewarding, share it with somebody else. Have a great day. I'll see you next week.